extremely excited for this conversation that we have coming up. Unfortunately, Dr. Shashua could not be here in person. A man of his responsibilities, it's very difficult to make it happen, unfortunately, but still very excited to have him here joining us remotely. Are you there, Dr. Shashua?
Yes, I'm here. Nice to see you.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to be here. I think it's as a sponsor, you're really important in making this whole event happen. And of course, we're in a room full of industry leaders here, and yet you stand out, I think, in this crowd as having a really unique history and perspective on not just driving automation technology, which of course Mobileye is one of the biggest names in the business of, but really AI kind of more broadly. And I wanted to start by sort of asking you to share a little bit of your sort of historical perspective on all of these technologies, because you were there in as an academic, many years ago. You started multiple companies and multiple versions of this sort of technology. And I wanted you to sort of just start by reflecting on your own journey and sort of where you see us now in this exciting journey towards the future.
Okay. Well, I think modern AI took the world by storm. So I see two reasons for it. One is called Tokenize Everything. So many different machine learning domains, they all use the same single AI architecture called the transformer. So as a student, there were very different disciplines of machine learning. It could be computer vision, could be language processing, could be acoustic processing, voice to text. Each one had its own community. Each one had its own tools. Today, they're all together. Today, there's one architecture. So this is the first thing that is exciting. The second is the scale. By scaling data, scaling model size, scaling compute, the performance gets better and better. So those two reasons, took the world by storm. But I think there are two open areas that call for some breakthroughs. I think, and those two areas, if we don't find good solutions for them, I don't think that AI will be truly transformative. So the first is precision. Precision is about providing guarantees that your answer is correct. So anyone who uses AI notices that sometimes the AI will provide a wrong answer, sometimes it will invent false facts, sometimes it will hallucinate. So for example, in the area of autonomous driving, guarantees means that you don't cause an accident, that you can tell what is the probability of making a perception mistake, what is the probability of making a lapse of judgment, and you want to reach a very high bar of precision. So this is one thing. Take, for example, agents. This new trend of trying to automate tasks using AI, that also requires precision, because if you have an agent that is 90% of the time brilliant and 10% of the time a complete moron, it's very, very difficult to work with such an agent. So precision is something that you see all across AI today is still lacking. And when you talk about autonomous driving, you really need to think about what to do there. For example, create redundancies, how to infuse correctness into the models in order to reach the very high bar. The second open area is lack of data. So when you think about language models, it has exhausted all the possible data there are today when you pre-train these models. Tens of trillions of tokens are used to train it today a model, and that's more or less exhausting all the data there is. So if you want to continue to increase performance and you're talking about a data-driven, paradigm, data-driven engine, where is the data coming from? So take, for example, in autonomous driving, and also in robotics, one technique of generating data is to use simulators to create an environment in which you have multiple agents. Each agent sees the world in a different manner. Each agent has a different, weighted reward function or kinematic state, and they all interact and in that way you generate infinite amount of data. So this is again another open area that they call it the need for a new scaling law, right? Because data has been exhausted.
Yeah, I want to dig into the precision point because I think it's really interesting that, we've had sort of all this progress in driving automation technology where, precision is not, you can't just laugh off a hallucination the way you can with large language learning models sometimes. And then you've seen large language learning models come out and kind of be less obviously precise, right? And have these sorts of issues. Is driving automation as a use case for AI, is there a forcing function there because it's so safety critical that really pushes forward on this precision problem that you lay out?
Look, I would say it's unprecedented to see a data-driven model to reach very high levels of precision. Take, for example, the latest eyes-on autonomous driving, the Tesla FSD. There's public data, the FSD tracker. The mean time between critical interventions about 10 hours. The bar is many tens of thousands of hours. So we are really far away from truly becoming eyes off when you look at precision. So the question is, where would the precision come from? By cranking more data. I said that it's unprecedented. Or by looking at aviation as an example, where you create redundancies. By creating redundancies, and those redundant systems, they don't share the errors, or the error profile is different, and find a way to fuse them together. We published a paper a few months ago. We call it PGF, Primary Guardian Fallback System, how to fuse the results of different subsystems. So and we do another thing, which we call artificial community intelligence. As I said before, in a way to create a game in which you can generate a lot of synthetic data in order to train driving policy. So instead of relying, say, on millions of hours of real data, we'll be relying on billions of hours of simulated data. And in that way, crank up the precision. So precision and autonomous driving is a big thing. It's a big issue.
Yeah, and so on the other piece of this, on the data one, it's very interesting to hear you talk about this simulation piece of it, because again, Mobileye, one of the key advantages is the scale that you have, right? The number of vehicles you have with your technology out there, the data you're able to get there. You've talked in the past about some of the misperceptions about how that data is useful. Bring that into the context now of this new era of as you say, sort of generative AI, and how does the value of that scale play into this new world that we're entering?
So we generate data through driving assist. So driving assist generates data, and we see the data coming in three categories. One is the video data that we use to train the perception system. So video data, we work with about 50 car makers. A production program generates about 10,000 hours of video data. So we have hundreds of petabytes of video data to train the perception system. So this is one source of data. Another source of data is to build enriched maps. That are different names for it. Sometimes it's called high definition maps. Sometimes it's called enriched SD maps. But you really want to collect details about the roadway, about the priorities, about where the lane marks are, about the connection with the traffic lights. It provides redundancy. It provides a foresight. There's a lot of use of map data. So here we have a system where cars with a front-facing camera generates low bandwidth data sent to the cloud, and we have millions of cars sending data, and we build these high-definition maps all over the world. So we have all US covered, Europe, Asia. So this is the second category of data. The third category of data is a bit controversial. The third category of data is data used to imitate humans in the way they merge into traffic. So if I have probes in cars with cameras, and I see how the human has driven a particular section of the road, I would like to use this data to train my driving policy. We believe that the amount of real-world data is not sufficient, and this is where we built this community of agents using simulated data, creating a game where multiple agents, some agents see only the world through cameras, some agents see the world with the maps. Each agent has a different, weighting differently the components of a reward function, and generate billions of miles of data rather than millions of miles of data. So those are the three categories of data that we use.
So one of the big sort of topics of conversation around sort of AI and some of the new changes that are coming into it is this idea of reasoning, right? Bringing sort of reasoning into it. And I feel like this is like a lot of things. It's a word that we sort of understand in our human context, right? And that can oftentimes lead us astray in terms of what's actually happening. Talk to us a little bit about what this means, reasoning in a sort of more technical, or hopefully more technically, sort of true sense, so that we understand the potential there.
Well, the idea of large reasoning models like O1 or 3, DeepSeek R1, and others, I think Gemini 2.5 is also a reasoning model. The basic assumption, which I believe is correct, that the language model knows more than what we extract from it. So, for example, if it starts generating tokens in the wrong direction, it has a sense that it is wrong. We just need to tell it that if it is wrong, it should try again. So we call this a chain of thoughts. So while training the model, if you insert, say, a token weight at the right point, then the language model will try again. And it has a sense that it's in the wrong direction, therefore it will try again. So by encouraging the language model to think aloud, to think step by step, to think aloud, the empirical evidence is that we can get better reasoning. But this doesn't solve the scaling, the new scaling law that one needs, because data has been exhausted. And the question would be how to continue improving those systems when data has been exhausted. So LRMs is a very important step forward. I think it doesn't solve the precision problem yet. The reasoning is intuitive reasoning rather than rigorous reasoning. I'll give an example. A few days ago, there was an exam of 6 questions in the Olympics of mathematics. And people took those 6 questions and ran them through all the big language models, O3 and DeepSeek R1 and all the ones that the reputable big language models. And you would expect that they would get a decent result, decent outcome. So each question has about 7 points in maximum. So if you succeed in all the questions, you get 42 points. An average human competitor receives around 22 points. The best language model received 2 points. So this is really far away. You would expect that they will get a much higher score given all the hype that we hear that today's language models is like a PhD student. No, it's not like a PhD student. Okay, sometimes it could give a right answer on a problem that is very similar to many problems that the system solves through pre-training or post-training. But if you have something really novel, they are quite idiotic, right? So there is still a big step to go, and I think it is related to those two issues. One, precision, being able to verify every step that you do in a scientific way, not in an intuitive way. And the second one is find a new source of data, because the real world data has been exhausted.
So kind of on that point, I think our friends in the capital markets, who are many of them in the room with us today, I think would love for everything to just be a software problem for very understandable reasons. But one of the things that's really fascinating about Mobileye to me, looking at the sweep of the history of the company, is that as a solution company, the hardware and the software are both equally important, have always been equally important parts of it. Lately, of course, starting with cameras primarily, and it's still the core of your business, but your hardware strategy has evolved as well. Talk about the role of hardware as a sort of critical piece of real world AI, because it feels like this is something that separates this use case from others.
So when we talk about hardware, there are two pieces. One is the compute.
Mm-hmm.
Our silicon is very efficient, cost-wise, performance-wise, allows us to put really heavy AI machinery, including transformers and convolutional nets, into the chip, and the chip is sometimes 1/10 of the cost of a competing chip, right? So this gives us a huge advantage. The second element of hardware is sensors. So historically, we are a camera company. So most of our work is around cameras in all our product portfolio, starting from front-facing camera to multiple cameras to FSD-like systems, which we call supervision. So it's all around cameras. And we believe that the cameras is really the heavy lifting element of any solution, because of the resolutions, the level of details. But if you want to create redundancy, you need additional sensors that have a very different profile of errors. And radars is the most suitable in terms of being very, very different from cameras. The problem is that radars, they lack the resolution, they lack the dynamic range, so they're not that useful as a redundant sensor. So this is why about 8 years ago, we started to develop a new class of radars called imaging radars, with a extremely high dynamic range, extremely high resolution, and they're ready now for production. And we believe that they'll provide the missing piece to go from an eyes-on system to an eyes-off, truly autonomous driving. So putting everything together, both the silicon and the imaging radars and the cameras, and to some degree, to some time, we'll use lidars. I believe that by the end of the decade, we will not even need the lidars, just imaging radars and cameras.
Fascinating. So one of the, the heart of the, a lot of what we learned about this space is that, there's no easy form of autonomous driving, right? But that the sort of general purpose and generalized domain of a personally owned car, plus the cost pressure that comes along with that, there's like really unique challenges with that. Obviously, of course, the robotaxi approach has its own challenges as well. Talk a little bit about sort of Mobileye's sort of market position here, and specifically sort of the challenge around validating that general purpose sort of autonomy that you've talked about before as being sort of the North Star for what you're trying to accomplish.
Well, validation requires both design and data. So to achieve safety, you first do safety by design. There's elements of SOTIF, element of FUSA. We designed a system called RSS to separate the driving policy, the decision-making of the car from the perception system of the car, and to guarantee that there will be never a lapse of judgment in the decision-making, and therefore we can focus the validation only on the perception. And then when we focus on the perception, it's all about redundancies and how to fuse different subsystems. So this is all in the design. But then when you need to validate, it's all around data. And when you want to validate say you want to validate an eyes-off system, we have a program with Audi that will be out early 2027. An eyes-off, autonomous eyes-off system with 130 kilometers per hour, auto lane change, quite a great variety of road types that the system should cover, hands, eyes off. So one way to validate is to start with the system as an eyes on. So hundreds of thousands of cars with an eyes on capability to get the validation data. So it's not training data, validation data, to prove that you have reached the precision bar. But you wanted to design the system in a way that will maximize the chances of your validation, because you don't want to be in a position where you launch hundreds of thousands of vehicles with an eyes-on capability, and then you find out that you are very far away from the precision bar for an eyes-off, right? You want to be close to it.
Hypothetically, of course.
Yeah. So, but it's all about data. So validation requires data.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, unfortunately, we are all out of time. Once again, I would love to continue this conversation more. Hopefully, we'll get the chance to do it again. Thank you so much, Dr. Shashua, for spending your time with us today. This has been really enlightening.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Ed, and good morning, everyone.
Thank you.